They told her to move. Not asked, told. In the first-class cabin of a flight she paid for, Dr. Camille Jordan, a middle-aged black woman dressed simply, was asked to give up her seat for a more deserving passenger. No explanation, no apology, just entitlement wrapped in fake smiles. The cabin watched, some snickering, some avoiding eye contact. Camille stood up without a word. But what no one knew was, in the next 30 minutes, this woman, whom they thought was nobody, would quietly ignite a fire that would shake the entire aviation industry. All with 3 silent messages. The cabin was quiet, cloaked in the soft hum of the engines and the gentle rustle of luxury newspapers. First class on a cross-country flight from JFK to Washington, D.C. was supposed to be an oasis of calm, untouched by the chaos of the terminal or the turbulence of life outside. Dr. Camille Jordan, dressed in a charcoal gray knit dress and flats, was already seated, seat 1A, gazing out the window. Her carry-on was tucked neatly under the seat. Her phone was off. Her mind was focused on the keynote she would deliver the next morning on aviation ethics reform. A shadow loomed. A figure stepped into her line of vision. "Excuse me, ma'am," said a voice with tight politeness and clipped professionalism. "I'm afraid we'll need to relocate you to another seat." Camille turned slowly, lifting her gaze to meet the stewardess standing above her, young, blonde, polished. The woman's name tag read Donna. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "There must be a mistake," Camille replied calmly, not moving. "This is seat 1A. That's what's on my ticket." Donna's smile tightened. "Yes, but we've had a change. One of our priority guests just boarded. He's a platinum-tier client, and we reserve these seats for them." Camille didn't respond right away. She simply blinked, her face composed. Around her, heads turned discreetly, or rather, pretended not to. The cabin's occupants, mostly older, mostly white, grew oddly still. She lowered her voice, almost kindly. "So, you're asking me to move? Because someone with more miles showed up?" Donna paused, then gave a half laugh. "We're asking for your cooperation, ma'am. I'm sure you understand." Of course, Camille understood. She understood exactly what was happening. The man who followed behind the stewardess wasn't trying to hide his impatience. Tall, early 30s, pale skin, navy blue suit. He glanced briefly at Camille, then looked past her as if she didn't exist. No nod, no acknowledgement, just the assumption of access. Power. "Excuse me," Donna urged again. "If you'll just grab your things, we've arranged a comfortable seat in the back row of first. Still premium class, of course." Still premium. Still dignified. Just not here. Camille inhaled through her nose, then exhaled. She didn't argue, didn't stand to make a scene. She unbuckled her belt slowly, reached beneath her seat, and retrieved her bag. The man behind Donna looked vaguely irritated at the delay. She stood, stepped aside, and watched as he slipped into seat 1A like he'd owned it since birth. Donna beamed at him. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Winslow." Camille walked in silence down the aisle, not looking left or right. She passed rows of eyes that tried not to meet hers, but someone was watching. A teenage boy, maybe 17, seated in 3C, held his phone low. His thumb tapped the record button without thinking. She took her new seat at the end of first, just before economy began. Not a bad seat, but not seat 1A, and not what she had paid for. She sat upright, legs crossed, posture perfect. Her fingers laced in her lap, eyes closed. Breathe in, breathe out. The boy in 3C posted the short clip to his private social media, captioned it, "They really just kicked a black woman out of 1A for that dude?" His post had barely 400 followers, but the algorithm had other plans. Back in 1A, Mr. Winslow was sipping his complimentary champagne. Donna offered him a hot towel with the kind of warmth she hadn't shown Camille. The entire exchange was over in less than 3 minutes. Except it wasn't over at all. Camille didn't speak to anyone, didn't call the attendant, didn't fume or sigh or whisper to herself in frustration. She simply sat there, breathing, her eyes half-lidded as if this were all just a meditation exercise. But inside, something was very much awake. She thought about the hundreds of first-class flights she had taken in her life, most without incident, some with minor slights. A few, like this one, with major ones. She always remembered. She remembered every microaggression, every smile that wasn't real, every time someone assumed she didn't belong where she was. Her phone vibrated, quiet, insistent. She ignored it. 3 rows ahead, the teenage boy's phone buzzed too. A friend had seen the clip, then 2, then 20, then 300. By the time the flight attendants were going over safety procedures, the post had crossed into the hands of someone with a platform. A local activist, then a journalist, then a famous actress. Camille remained still. She had built empires in silence. A younger Camille might have said something, might have demanded justice in the moment, filed a complaint, made noise. But this Camille? She was different. She didn't just want justice. She wanted change. And sometimes, change required a longer game. The stewardess brought her a drink. Still polite, still empty. Camille declined. Behind her, voices whispered. 2 older women were murmuring about that situation up front. A businessman chuckled quietly about entitled customers. They didn't know who she was. None of them did. Yet, the hum of the engines was the only sound Camille let into her thoughts. Her eyes remained fixed on the back of the seat ahead, her hands still in her lap, her posture straight but relaxed. The insult had passed. The slight had been made. The world, it seemed, had moved on. But not everyone had. Beside her, in seat 4B, an elderly woman with soft white curls and a delicate silk scarf turned slowly to face her. Camille caught the movement in her periphery but didn't shift. "I'm sorry, dear," the woman said gently. Her voice was a little hoarse, the kind that trembled with age but rang with conviction. "That was unacceptable. You don't need me to tell you that, of course, but I need to say it." Camille turned slightly, enough to meet her eyes, blue, bright, and sad. "I've been flying first class for decades," the woman continued. "And I've never seen someone moved like that. Not like this, not when they were already seated. That wasn't policy. That was prejudice, plain and simple." Camille gave her the faintest nod. "Thank you." "I marched in Selma in '65, the woman said, almost absently, as though she were reminding herself. "Saw a man beaten in Montgomery for just sitting where he was told he couldn't. I never thought I'd see this again. Not up here, not in 2025. Camille blinked. Something sharp and unspoken passed between them. The woman leaned in, voice lower. "My name's Ruth, and I know you probably want to forget this flight ever happened. But someone has to remember. Someone has to bear witness." Before Camille could respond, Ruth slowly reached into her handbag and pulled out a small phone. She navigated to her camera app with shaky fingers, then paused. "Do you mind?" she asked. Camille hesitated, then shook her head. "Do what you need to do." Ruth smiled grimly and tapped play. She hadn't captured the beginning of the incident, but she had caught enough. The stewardess's condescension, the man's entitlement, the subtle dismissal, Camille's silence, her graceful exit. The phone trembled slightly in Ruth's hand, but the camera was steady enough. She stopped recording, glanced over the footage, then nodded to herself. "This needs to be seen." Camille turned to her. "May I ask why this matters so much to you?" Ruth's eyes watered, but she didn't cry. "Because I thought we'd fix this. I thought marching, protesting, voting, it meant something. But I see now it was just the beginning, and people like you shouldn't have to carry this weight alone. Not again." Then Ruth did something unexpected. She opened her live stream app. Camille's eyes widened, just a little. "You're going live?" Ruth winked. "I may be almost 80, but I still know how to shake the table." She titled the stream, "They Told Her to Move." I watched it happen. And she hit Go live. The stream opened to a few dozen viewers, Ruth's grandchildren likely, and a few old activist friends. But within minutes, the number began to tick upward. Dozens turned to hundreds. Ruth spoke softly to the camera. I just witnessed a woman, a paying customer, being removed from her assigned seat because someone decided she didn't belong there, because a white man decided he did. Camille shifted slightly, her name still unspoken, her identity still cloaked. She allowed it. Ruth continued. This is not the America I fought for, not the country I marched for. We cannot keep letting this happen. The comments began flooding in. Where is this? What airline? This is disgusting. The momentum grew fast. One viewer clipped the key segment and reposted it with a caption, White elder stands up for black woman kicked out of first class. Another added, This isn't just a story, it's a pattern. Meanwhile, the boy from 3C, whose post had already gained traction, realized his footage aligned perfectly with Ruth's. He commented under her live stream, I got video from before, DM me. Ruth's following swelled into the thousands. Camille sat beside her, still quiet, still unmoved, but her eyes flickered, just once, toward the screen. The view count climbed. Ruth ended the stream after 10 minutes, her hands trembling slightly. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable, she said, putting her phone away. But I couldn't just sit here. Camille's voice was low. You didn't make me uncomfortable. You reminded me that some battles aren't just mine to fight. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ruth added, I don't know who you are, and I don't need to, but you have presence, dear. The kind that makes people uncomfortable, even before they know why. Camille smiled, barely. I've heard that before. A flight attendant passed by but didn't stop. Perhaps she hadn't seen the stream yet. Perhaps she had. Camille glanced at the time. 17 minutes since Ruth went live. Already, hashtags were forming. She was moved. This is not America. Camille unseen. And yet, Camille had still not spoken. Not publicly. Not to the camera. She didn't need to. Not yet. But the spark had been lit. And the fire was coming. By the time the plane leveled out at cruising altitude, the atmosphere inside the cabin had grown noticeably denser. Something hung in the air. Not turbulence. Not technical malfunction. But something far more human. Tension. Discomfort. A sense of something unraveling beneath the surface. Camille remained still, serene, her eyes closed as if meditating, but her ears were listening. 3 rows ahead, a whisper. She's trending, a flight attendant muttered to another, her voice sharp, tinged with panic. Donna, the head of the crew, reappeared in the aisle. Her stride was no longer graceful. It was purposeful, stiff. She clutched a tablet in her hand. The screen lit up with open browser tabs. Twitter, Reddit, a few live streams. Her jaw tightened as she scrolled. She recognized herself in at least 3 of the clips. Her face, her voice, her smirk. She wasn't just part of the story. She was the villain. Her composure slipped for the first time. She leaned toward the young attendant, Maria, who had been pouring drinks. I want to know who took that video. Find out where they're seated. Maria blinked. Donna, it's kind of everywhere now. Hundreds of people have posted it. You can't... I said find them, Donna hissed, loud enough for a nearby passenger to glance up. We have policies against unauthorized recording. If necessary, we'll escalate. Maria hesitated. Escalate? Donna took a step back and tapped on her earpiece. This is Donna Myers, lead crew for Flight 7289. I need to request an immediate escalation protocol. Possible unauthorized recording and breach of cabin privacy. I want to initiate standby procedures for emergency landing, pending confirmation. The line was silent for a second. Then a male voice responded, Donna, that's a serious escalation. What's the exact threat? Reputational breach, Donna snapped. Multiple passengers recording and spreading misinformation. We can't have this going viral. Our guest in 1A is highly connected. He won't tolerate this." Camille heard every word. She opened her eyes slowly, gazing toward the curtains separating first from the galley where Donna stood, now visibly agitated. Ruth leaned over, whispering, "She's trying to land the plane?" Camille shook her head once. "She's trying to control the narrative." Meanwhile, the boy in 3C, Liam, noticed Donna staring directly at him. Her glare was unmistakable, predatory. He sank into his seat, slid his phone deeper under his thigh. He'd already backed up his footage to the cloud, posted it twice. It didn't matter if they took his phone now. The story was out. Donna moved up the aisle, stopping at his row. "Young man," she said, voice sugary, "may I speak with you privately? Regarding your device?" He looked at her, heart thumping. "Did I do something wrong?" "Just a quick check," she said, "for safety compliance." Ruth, watching from her row, stood up. "I'll come too," she said loudly. Donna turned, eyes narrowing. "Ma'am, this is a matter for the passenger only." "No, I believe it's a matter for everyone now," Ruth said, "especially since you're abusing your authority to intimidate a minor. I may be old, but I've dealt with bigger bullies than you." Several passengers turned. Donna flushed crimson. She pivoted and stormed back toward the front. Camille's phone buzzed in her lap, a vibration only she could feel. She unlocked the screen slowly, reading the encrypted message. "Protocol Delta 7 standing by. One word from you, we ground the entire crew." She stared at the screen. Another buzz. "Donna contacting TSA to request forced offloading. She's trying to flip this." Camille locked her phone again, set it gently on her thigh. Still, she didn't move. Not yet. Donna returned to the front galley, her headset crackling. "Yes, I've identified the main instigators. One elderly passenger, one underage, both aggressive. I'm recommending offload procedures upon landing." The supervisor on the other end was silent for a long beat. "Donna, there's a trending hashtag. You're in it. This has already gone public. If we touch that kid or the older woman, it'll explode." Donna exhaled sharply. "So what do we do? Just sit here and let them destroy our brand?" "No," came the answer. "We sit here, and we don't do anything else until legal clears it." Donna's hand clenched around her tablet. She turned, glaring down the aisle. Her eyes locked on Camille's face, calm, unreadable, watching her like a professor observing a student fail an open-book exam. For a second, Donna's voice cracked. She planned this. A younger attendant heard her and raised a brow. "Planned what?" Donna shook her head. "She's not just a passenger. She's someone important. I can feel it." "Then why didn't you feel it before?" The question hovered in the air, unspoken. Back in 4A, Ruth sat down beside Camille again. "They're cracking." Camille nodded. "I've seen power shake before," Ruth added, "but never this quietly. You're not going to say anything, are you?" "Not yet," Camille murmured. "Why not?" "Because right now, they're revealing everything." Seat 1A reclined slightly as Aubrey Winslow, the passenger who had displaced Camille, tapped absent-mindedly on his tablet. His navy blazer remained wrinkle-free, his posture relaxed, as if he hadn't noticed the chaos rippling through the cabin behind him. If he had, he didn't show it. Aubrey was no stranger to first class, or headlines. Son of industrial magnate Prescott Winslow, whose empire quietly held controlling stakes in rail, shipping, and aerospace infrastructure, Aubrey was the heir to a fortune built over generations. He didn't just fly. He purchased the runways others flew from. And today, he was testing his newest acquisition target, Horizon Skies. The airline Camille had quietly rebuilt from a failing regional line into one of the most respected international carriers in less than 5 years. Except he didn't know the woman he'd displaced from 1A was the same woman who had built that empire. Or so he thought. Behind him, Camille leaned forward slightly, tapping a single message into a secure app. Status update. Subject 1A Il Aubrey Winslow confirmed. Operation Fidelity trap sprung. She hit send and leaned back again. Next to her, Ruth raised an eyebrow. That's a strange expression for someone being publicly humiliated. Camille's lips twitched. Sometimes the best way to catch a fish is to let it believe it's the hunter. Ruth narrowed her eyes. That man in 1A, you knew he'd be here? Yes. And the seat? The demotion? Planned. Ruth blinked. So, all of this? Camille gave her a knowing look. 3 weeks earlier, Camille had sat across from Horizon Sky's board of directors. All men. All older. All afraid. They'd received a proposal from Winslow Holdings, an aggressive buy-in offer for 40% stake. On paper, it was attractive. Capital injection, access to international terminals, and a supposed merger plan that would unify the future of American aviation. But Camille saw through it. She always did. She knew the Winslows. Prescott had lobbied against equity regulations Camille had pushed through 2 years prior. He believed inclusivity diluted efficiency. Aubrey, molded in the same image, had taken to social media cryptically mocking Horizon's progressive policies. And now he wanted in? No. Worse, he wanted her out. Camille had responded to the proposal with one sentence. Let me fly with him. Donna didn't know that her directive to displace Camille from 1A had come directly from Aubrey's team. She thought she was currying favor with a VIP. She didn't know she was being used as part of a test, a pressure gauge to see how Camille would respond when pushed publicly. Would she make a scene? Would she assert herself? Or would she retreat? If she'd done any of those things, it would have been used against her. Too emotional to lead. Too passive to protect shareholder value. A woman, a black woman, losing her composure or losing face, either outcome served the Winslows. But Camille had chosen a third option. She'd let them bury themselves. Back in 1A, Aubrey received a secure message from his associate. She hasn't moved. No statement, no escalation. Board watching. He smirked. Exactly what they wanted. Or so he believed. Another message followed. Old woman livestream went viral. We're trending. His jaw twitched. Not part of the plan. In 4A, Ruth shook her head. So this was all theater? Camille looked at her. It was opportunity. They gave me the stage. I just chose the lighting. And now what? Camille's phone vibrated. A private message from her general counsel. Legal confirms Winslow Group planted the seat reassignment directive. We have them on internal record, time-stamped. She replied with one word. Hold. Then turned to Ruth. Now, Camille said, we let the audience see who's pulling the strings. In the galley, Donna was in full crisis mode. She'd been informed that her emergency landing request had been denied, that senior legal teams were now monitoring the flight live, that her own conduct was under scrutiny. Worse, her interactions with Aubrey Winslow had raised flags. She marched toward 1A. Mr. Winslow, she said, low and urgent. We're losing control of the narrative. That woman, she might be someone important. There's chatter. Aubrey barely looked up. Let them chatter. She hasn't moved, hasn't posted. As far as anyone knows, she's just another upset customer. PR can spin that. She's not another customer, Donna hissed. There's a vibe. The crew's uneasy. He rolled his eyes. Do your job. She opened her mouth to argue, but hesitated. Something in the air had changed. Camille hadn't just gone quiet. She'd gone strategic. A notification pinged on Donna's device. It was a message from an internal Horizon Skies network. Emergency compliance alert. Subject C.J. Jordan verified on board. All crew conduct to be reviewed. Legal monitoring in effect. Her heart stopped. C.J. Jordan. Camille Jordan. Founder. CEO. The woman whose photo had hung in the executive hallway for 5 years. The woman she'd dismissed as just another entitled passenger. Donna staggered backward. Aubrey looked up now. He saw her face. What is it? She showed him the message. For the first time, he looked shaken. She knew, he whispered. Yes, Donna said hoarsely. She let it happen. Aubrey stood quickly, facing the cabin. Far back in 4A, Camille met his eyes and didn't blink. The trap had closed. The lights dimmed slightly in the cabin, signaling the start of in-flight service. But something else dimmed too, the illusion of control that Donna and Aubrey had clung to for the past hour. The dynamic of the flight was shifting quietly, without announcements or confrontation. Camille sat motionless, eyes focused on the back of the seat in front of her. In her hand, her phone, silent, discreet, encoded. She tapped once, entered a 6-digit code, and opened a black and white interface few people on Earth even knew existed. Delta 7. A system designed not for revenge, not even for punishment, but for restructuring power silently and instantly. She selected 3 options: internal crew compliance breach, on external stakeholder alert, on media synchronization node, on 3 toggles, 3 messages, no phone call, no voice, no explanation. Then she hit activate. The screen blinked. Delta 7 protocol activated, ETA, 11 minutes. She locked the screen and placed the phone back into the side pocket of her seat. To the average observer, she looked like a tired passenger trying to nap. To the system she had built, she had just pulled a lever. At JFK International Airport, inside the Horizon Skies Operations Center, a subtle chime rang through a private channel. A technician named Lena glanced at her terminal. Delta 7, she muttered. That can't be right. She typed in the override code, verified again. The screen turned red. Emergency Oversight Command, Origin, CJ. Lena stood up. Hey, someone get legal, get logistics. Camille Jordan just pulled Delta 7 on flight 7289. Across the floor, managers dropped what they were doing. A red line began moving across internal systems. Cabin crew profiles flagged for compliance audit, communications auto-archived, ground response teams pre-deployed. And in a secure server room 3 floors underground, a node began pushing time-stamped footage and data logs to legal teams, board members, and 2 major media outlets under sealed embargo. Back in the sky, the atmosphere hadn't changed yet, but Camille could feel it tightening like a noose. She could almost hear the gears turning. Aubrey was pacing in front of his seat now, muttering into a headset. Why hasn't she said anything? She's not even filming. Why isn't she defending herself? Donna had retreated to the galley, phone in hand, calling someone with urgency. We're not ready for this. We didn't vet her. Nobody told us she was on this flight. The silence around Camille was her sanctuary and her sword. She didn't need to speak. She'd already written the next 10 steps. A new alert appeared on her phone screen. Public exposure phase engaged. #@CamilleKnows now trending. She scrolled. Ruth's video had crossed 1.2 million views. Liam's clip, clipped and stitched with Ruth's, was now on TikTok, shared by influencers, civil rights pages, even a few celebrity activists. And not once had Camille posted a single thing. She glanced at Ruth. The older woman had fallen into a thoughtful silence, watching the aisle. Ruth leaned in. Whatever you just did, I can feel it. Camille smiled faintly. It's already happening. 10 rows back, a businessman checked his phone, nudged his neighbor. Isn't that the CEO they pushed out of her seat? Wait, what? The other said. You mean she owns the airline? No, she built it, from scratch. Turned it into one of the best rated in the country. But why didn't she say anything? Because she doesn't need to. Camille's second message had reached its destination. In a brightly lit boardroom in D.C., 3 board members received simultaneous pings on their private comms. All 3 paused mid-meeting. Delta 7 initiated by Camille, one whispered. She's live? Yeah, and trending. One of them stood. If she's using Delta 7, that means this flight's crew just lost protection, and Winslow's interference. That's breach of ethics at the highest level. A call was placed to FAA oversight. Quiet, precise. Donna's headset beeped. A supervisor from HQ finally responded to her previous distress call. Donna, listen carefully. Do not approach the passenger in 4A. Do not speak to her. Do not interact with her. What? Donna snapped. Why? She's executing Delta 7. You've already been flagged. Legal is watching this flight in real time." Donna's face drained of color. "She was testing us," she said softly. "No," the voice on the line replied. "You were testing her, and you failed." Meanwhile, Aubrey's phone buzzed again. A message from his father. "Aubrey, pull out now. She played you. The board's turning." He looked up, eyes wide. "She's not just trying to embarrass us," he muttered to himself. "She's taking the company back." And she was, without raising her voice, without making a scene, without moving from her seat. Inside the cockpit, the captain received a private system alert. "Crew compliance audit in progress. Maintain route. Do not interact with subject in 4A. Await further instruction." The first officer looked confused. "Captain, what's going on?" The captain gave a tight smile. "Nothing we can interfere with. Just sit tight and follow orders." 11 minutes after Camille tapped "Activate," the effect was complete. The crew's behavior was flagged and frozen. Security logs were exported. News outlets were quietly briefed. Board members were watching. Hashtags were trending. And Camille? She sipped her water. Calm, unbothered, powerful. Not with a scream, but with silence. As the plane sliced through clouds somewhere above Virginia, the real turbulence was brewing not in the sky, but in inboxes, servers, and encrypted chat rooms scattered across the eastern seaboard. Camille's second phase of Delta 7 had activated without a whisper. No voice raised. No press release. No press conference. Only a curated sequence of silent dominoes, tipped in perfect timing. At precisely 2:41 p.m., an automated dossier was delivered to 4 recipients: the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the FAA Office of Ethics and Accountability, and 2 highly vetted investigative journalists, one at The Atlantic, the other at Reuters. Inside the file, a collection of audio logs, internal crew reports, staff reviews, and, most damning of all, email chains dating back 3 years flagged with a single subject line. Too many of them in first class? One message came from Donna's personal work address. The thread discussed demographic balance in premium cabins. She'd joked, "It's not the NAACP up here, after all." In another thread, Aubrey Winslow had replied to a team member's concern about a diversity ad campaign. He wrote, "Our brand is luxury, not affirmative action." The receipts weren't just ugly, they were radioactive. At Horizon Sky's headquarters, a war room formed in real time. Monitors flared with news headlines, hashtags, legal memos, and internal HR files. In the legal office, the general counsel stared at the screen. "She didn't just activate Delta 7 to fix a flight crew issue," he murmured. "She used it to push a systemic audit." One of his staff asked, "Why send the info outside? Why DOJ and media?" "Because she knew if she only kept it internal, they'd bury it, like they always do. This way, it's public before anyone can spin it." And it was. On social media, the tone had shifted, from outrage to revelation. "Y'all, this goes deeper. Look at these leaked emails. This isn't about a seat anymore." She let them hang themselves and then dropped the truth. Trending tags collided into each other. Camille knows, #luxury for whom? Donna the divider. Winslow exposed. By 2:53 p.m., Camille's name was top 3 trending across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Yet on the plane, she hadn't spoken a single word. Aubrey's phone vibrated non-stop. He tried to silence it, but one particular message froze his hand mid-swipe. From a private investor, "Pull out, now. Our board just voted to freeze all Winslow acquisition discussions." Your comments surfaced. "It's over." Aubrey stood up, wide-eyed. "We need to talk to her. We need to fix this." Donna looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Talk to her. We kicked her out of her seat, insulted her, then tried to cover it. What makes you think she wants to talk? She doesn't have to want it. She needs it. We're both going down unless..." His voice died in his throat. Camille had stood up. For the first time since the incident began, she walked forward, slowly, deliberately, toward the front cabin. Every eye turned. Phones were raised. A hush fell. Ruth sat back, watching her go, smiling softly. Camille reached 1A and stopped beside Aubrey. He opened his mouth. She raised a finger. He froze. Without a word, she reached into her handbag and removed a small white envelope. She handed it to him. Inside, a one-page letter, typed, signed, dated 3 weeks ago. To the Board of Horizon Skies, conditional activation of Delta 7 Protocol. In the event that I, Camille Jordan, am subjected to racial bias or professional erasure in a high-visibility setting instigated or supported by individuals with a known history of discriminatory behavior, I authorize the release of the following evidentiary package to all relevant legal and media entities. This action will be considered final and non-negotiable. Let the system judge the truth. Sincerely, Dr. Camille L. Jordan. Aubrey looked up. His lips parted, but no sound came out. She leaned closer. "I knew you were coming," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I knew exactly what kind of man you are," he swallowed. "I gave you a rope," she continued, "and you tied the noose yourself." She walked away, back to her seat. Donna stood frozen in the galley, now pale. The captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed by corporate to proceed with standard landing protocol. Please remain seated. Additional crew will be joining us upon arrival." Additional crew. Translation: you're all under review. In a brightly lit office in D.C., DOJ analysts scanned through Camille's dossier. A young lawyer whispered, "This isn't just a one-time violation. This is a culture." The senior official leaned back in his chair. "She didn't go to the press first. She came to us. That's rare and strategic." "What do we do?" He tapped his desk. "We go in." By 3:00 p.m., both Donna and Aubrey's names had entered the national conversation. Cable news picked up the story. Graphics splashed across the screen. Airline CEO quietly exposes systemic bias without saying a word. Journalists called it the most subtle and effective takedown in modern corporate history. Students at law schools posted reactions. "We're going to study Camille Jordan like we studied Ruth Bader Ginsburg." And still, Camille had not spoken another word. She didn't need to. Her actions had already spoken for her. It began with a simple act. No speech, no fanfare. Just the quiet rustle of fabric as Camille Jordan rose from seat 4A. Up until now, she had been the enigma, silent, observing, always one step ahead. But as she stood, the air shifted. Something primal pulsed through the cabin. Every eye turned. Every hand holding a phone froze mid-scroll. Even the ambient cabin noise seemed to hush, like the aircraft itself was bracing for what came next. She stepped into the aisle. No rush, no hesitation. With each footstep toward the front of the plane, whispers spread like wildfire. "That's her! She's the CEO? Is this really happening right now?" "She's trending everywhere. Camille Jordan." Passengers lifted their phones instinctively. Live streams went live. Hashtags ignited in real time. On every screen across America, and increasingly around the world, people watched a woman in a simple gray dress walk calmly toward the cockpit. Camille stopped just outside the first-class curtain. Aubrey turned, face pale. Donna stood stiffly in the galley, headset still in place, but her hands trembled. Camille said nothing. Instead, she reached into her bag and retrieved a black leather card holder. Inside, a single card, sleek, matte, embossed in platinum foil. Horizon Skies. Founder Access. Authority Level 1, CJ. She raised the card and tapped it against the embedded NFC panel beside the galley. A soft chime rang out. Then a tone, deeper, louder. The cabin lights flickered briefly, then changed color. From soft, warm white to a cool blue hue, reserved only for administrative override. A voice came through the intercom. Not the captain, but a synthesized system prompt. Founder override engaged. Crew compliance review in progress. Please stand by. Donna gasped. What did you... Camille turned to her, voice low, firm, unshakable. I didn't override the system, Donna. I built it. Gasps erupted throughout the cabin. Someone dropped a drink. The tension shattered into awe. She built the system, one passenger murmured. She's the founder, another whispered. She's the one they wrote the policy for. Donna took a half step back, her headset slipping off one ear. This wasn't in the manual. Camille gave a faint smile. That's because you weren't supposed to see it. The cockpit door opened slightly as the captain leaned out, face composed, eyes sharp. Dr. Jordan, he said with a respectful nod. Instructions? Standard compliance lockdown, she replied. All in-flight authority transferred to Founder's protocol. Full crew suspension. External audit initiated. He nodded. Understood. She turned back to the passengers, now frozen, staring. Ladies and gentlemen, she said calmly, her voice carrying not by volume but by presence. I apologize for the disturbance. You've witnessed a moment in history, uncomfortable but necessary. The crew has been relieved of duty. We will land as scheduled, safely, and without delay. The cabin erupted, not in panic, but in applause. Loud, spontaneous, filled with emotion. Some clapped. Others shouted her name. A few cried. Phones were everywhere. TikTok live feeds, Instagram stories, hashtags exploding, hashed Camille the Founder, Flight 7289, Silent Justice, our CEO, in the sky. Aubrey backed into seat 1C, stunned, mouth agape. She had full override, he muttered. She played the long game. Camille didn't even glance at him. Donna tried one last desperate move. This is illegal. Abuse of power. You can't just... Camille looked directly at her. You're right. Abuse of power is illegal. That's why you're done. At that moment, the overhead chime sounded again. Attention, replacement crew en route. Passengers, please remain seated. You are safe. You are seen. You are heard. Gasps again. Passengers began standing, not in protest, but to give her room. Like a procession. Like reverence. Camille walked back to her seat, every step followed by murmurs of awe. Ruth was crying silently. You didn't just flip the script, she whispered as Camille sat down. You burned the old one. Camille didn't reply. She looked out the window, sunlight catching her reflection. Calm, still. Then she reached for her phone and typed one final message into her private system. Phase 3 complete. Begin full realignment. Board to convene on landing. And with that, she placed the phone back in her pocket. In real time, every major news outlet picked up the scene from live streams. Dr. Camille Jordan, founder of Horizon Skies, activates emergency founder protocol mid-flight to suspend entire flight crew amid discrimination scandal. Cable anchors struggled to keep up with the feed. She just activated an executive override from 35,000 feet. She built this entire system, and they tried to remove her from her own seat. This is the most elegant coup we've ever seen in corporate aviation. Back at headquarters, executives who once doubted her sat in stunned silence. No one dared question her anymore. She didn't need a board vote. She was the board. And above the clouds, on Flight 7289, Justice had not landed yet. But it was cruising at full speed. The shockwave hit the ground before the plane did, while Camille sat quietly in seat 4A, letting the altitude cradle her back into silence. The Winslow family launched their counterattack with the efficiency and ruthlessness of an empire used to controlling the story. At exactly 3:17 p.m., less than 30 minutes after Camille activated Founder Protocol, Winslow Holdings issued a public statement on their corporate X, formerly Twitter, account. Today's unfortunate incident aboard Flight 7289 was the result of a private executive disagreement that has been mischaracterized by incomplete social media narratives. We caution against sensationalism and call for calm. At first glance, it was vague, but 5 minutes later, the second message dropped. More direct, more pointed. While Horizon Sky's founder is entitled to her beliefs, we are concerned by her use of emergency override powers to conduct a public political stunt. Business should not be used as a stage for radical activism. And there it was, the pivot. The Winslows were painting Camille not as a woman who exposed systemic discrimination, but as a radical, a disruptor, a liability. They weren't challenging the facts. They were reframing the narrative. By 3:35 p.m., business-focused media outlets picked up the shift. Camille Jordan overreaches, founder faces backlash over mid-flight power move. Is founder override ethical? Critics weigh in. Too much power in one seat? The headlines weren't lies. They were questions, but the tone was unmistakable. In her penthouse in Manhattan, Prescott Winslow, the patriarch, watched 4 monitors simultaneously. Market tickers, social feeds, email threads, and a legal draft scrolling rapidly. He didn't slam his fists. He didn't shout. He adjusted his tie and said calmly to his media advisor, "Don't kill her. Discredit her. Paint her as unstable. Make the shareholders nervous." "Yes, sir." "And start floating names. Replacement CEO potentials. Whisper about board unrest. Make her silence seem suspicious." "Understood." On board Flight 7289, Camille read every headline as they came in. Her phone buzzed like a heartbeat. She didn't react. Not to the rebranding of her character. Not to the interviews with so-called anonymous board insiders. Not even to the trending tag, #Camille the Radical. Ruth leaned closer. "They're turning the tide. They're trying to flip it." Camille's gaze remained steady. "Expected." "Doesn't it bother you?" Camille replied without pause. "It doesn't change what happened, just how they hope people remember it." "But still, they're afraid," Camille said. "Afraid that a quiet black woman just proved you can dismantle power without screaming. That terrifies them." Ruth exhaled slowly. "I'm not sure people will see that." "Some won't," Camille admitted. "Others already have. The rest will catch up." Meanwhile, social media fractured. For every tweet praising Camille's brilliance, another questioned her motives. This was orchestrated. She knew what she was doing, manipulative. CEO pulls rank mid-air. That's ego, not justice. News anchors fumbled for balance. She did expose a history of discrimination. Yes, but activating emergency override mid-flight, was that necessary? She's become a symbol, but symbols divide people. Camille's silence fueled it all. Every minute she said nothing, speculation grew louder. Some begged her to speak. "Please, Camille, clarify. We're behind you, but people are twisting this. Use your voice before they erase you." "Where are you?" But she remained still. Still in seat 4A. Still watching the sky turn golden outside the window. In a conference room in D.C., 2 board members debated furiously. "She went too far. We're getting calls from investors. Legal wants a statement." "The market's with her. Have you seen the support threads? The DOJ's backing her position. We can't distance ourselves now. We don't need her as the face anymore. Let her become the myth. Replace her before it spirals. Or maybe she's letting them spiral. Ever think of that?" Donna, in the crew hold area, sat curled into herself. She'd been officially suspended mid-flight, her badge locked remotely. Her phone had been confiscated. She saw her name trending, but for all the wrong reasons. Screenshots of her emails, clips of her voice, voiceovers adding captions like, "This is what entitlement sounds like." No one was defending her, not even the airline's union. The system was disowning her as swiftly as it once protected her. Aubrey stared at his phone, watching his father's PR machine try to salvage what had become a slow, rolling train wreck. Camille had done almost nothing, and yet he was bleeding credibility. No footage of her yelling, no video of her demanding justice. Just calm, cold, control. It was infuriating. He texted his father. "She's not reacting." "What now?" Prescott responded. "She will, eventually. They always do." But she didn't. Not now. Not here. Camille simply waited, letting her silence scream louder than their spin. The plane began its descent. The city lights of Washington glimmered on the horizon. Passengers braced, not for landing, but for what waited on the ground. Was Camille still in charge? Would she be fired? Would she finally speak? She gazed out the window, reflection flickering against the glass. Calm, as if she weren't at the center of a media firestorm, as if she weren't being framed as a radical, as if she hadn't just rewritten the rules of leadership by doing absolutely nothing. And maybe that's what frightened them most. The landing was smooth, routine, mechanical, as if nothing extraordinary had happened at 30,000 feet. The wheels kissed the tarmac. The plane taxied. The voice of a substitute crew member came over the intercom with clinical politeness. "Welcome to Washington, D.C. Please remain seated until the aircraft has come to a full stop." But inside seat 4A, Camille Jordan was anything but still. Not in her memories, not in her history, not in the version of herself the world had yet to meet. Outside the window, the terminal lights glowed soft and sterile. But her mind drifted far from the sleek runways and headlines of today, back to a hangar in Texas, 1998. She was 25, fresh out of the Air Force Academy, top of her class, perfect vision, stellar evaluations, discipline tattooed into her bones. She stood in front of the recruiter at Horizon Aviation Corps, holding a binder full of recommendations. The man, older, white, polite in the southern way that cuts like ice, flipped through her folder without looking at her once. "You certainly look qualified, Miss Jordan," he said. "Dr. Jordan," she corrected gently. "Ph.D. in aeronautical engineering." He gave a tight smile. "Right, of course." He closed the folder and leaned back. "We've got a good program here. We've produced some of the best commercial pilots in the country. I'd be honored to join." He tapped the folder, sighed, then said it. The sentence that would stick in her ribs for decades. "I just wonder how passengers might feel seeing someone like you in the cockpit." She didn't respond, didn't blink. She stood up, shook his hand, and walked out with her spine straighter than ever. But inside, something fractured, and that fracture never fully healed. In the years that followed, Camille didn't try to become a pilot again, not because she couldn't, but because she had learned something more important. Power wasn't only in the cockpit, it was in the boardroom. It was in policies. It was in what systems allowed and whom they excluded. She would not ask for permission to belong. She would build the space herself, and she did. Now, 27 years later, she sat in her own aircraft, in her own airline, carrying her own override card, and still, they tried to remove her, because power, to them, was conditional. Power was acceptable as long as it was invisible, quiet, polite, gratitude wrapped in silence. But she had never forgotten that day in 1998, that moment when the door closed in her face. Today was not revenge for that one moment. Today was retribution for every black woman who had been told, "Someone like you," wasn't enough. As the plane rolled to a stop, a camera light blinked quietly from the opposite row. A young girl, maybe 15, recorded a short video on her phone, whispering, "She's just sitting there, calm, like she knew this would all happen." The video would go viral by midnight. The caption would read, "She wasn't angry. She was remembering." At that moment, Ruth leaned in. "You okay?" Camille nodded. "I imagine this hits deeper than today." Camille smiled softly. "Deeper than people understand." Ruth's eyes glistened. "Want to tell me?" Camille hesitated, then said, "First time I applied to fly for this industry, they told me I didn't look the part. They were wrong. They were powerful. But now you're more powerful." Camille said nothing, because it wasn't about her anymore. Back at Horizon Sky's headquarters, an internal video leaked. A 3-minute segment from a 2020 staff meeting Camille had led, never meant for public release. In it, she says, "One day, someone who looks like me is going to sit in first class and not be questioned, not be removed, not be reduced, not because we trained the crew better, but because we changed what first class means." The video resurfaced on Reddit, then moved to Twitter, then to every corner of the internet. The hashtag changed. From #Camille the Radical to #Camille the Blueprint, thousands commented. She didn't react because she already lived this before. This wasn't just for her. This was for all of us. I see my mom in her, my sister, myself. On TV, an anchor choked up live on air. She sat through humiliation with grace, not silence, grace. And she turned it into structure, policy, movement. That's not radical, that's historic. And yet Camille still said nothing. No interview, no press statement, just presence, unshakable, unapologetic. In the terminal, as she exited the plane, passengers stepped aside naturally. No one asked for selfies. No one tried to stop her. They just watched her walk, watched the story become legend. And when she passed the window, where a small girl in a wheelchair waited beside her mother, the child looked up and whispered, "Is that her?" The mother nodded. "Yes, baby, that's her." Camille paused, knelt beside the girl, squeezed her hand once, then stood, and kept walking. The press conference was scheduled for noon. No teasers, no leaks, just a short email to every major news outlet. Founder Camille Jordan will make a public address. Location, Horizon Sky's Global HQ. No questions. The anticipation was electric. No one knew if she'd speak at all. She hadn't uttered a word to the media since the flight, not even when footage of her confronting Donna had aired on every major news outlet. Not when politicians weighed in. Not even when the FAA quietly opened an ethics review based on her submitted documentation. Yet today, she would speak. The auditorium wasn't grand. A sleek, glass-walled briefing room. No backdrop of flags or company logos. Just Camille standing alone at a podium. A single screen behind her. Her gray suit was sharp, modern. Minimalist jewelry. No makeup team. The room went silent as she stepped forward, hands resting lightly on the podium edge. The cameras clicked in rhythm, then stopped. She looked out over the room, and then, for the first time since Flight 7289, she spoke. "Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Camille Jordan. I am the founder of Horizon Skies." She let the words settle, not as a flex, but as a reminder. 5 days ago, I was asked to vacate my assigned seat on a flight operated by my own airline. It wasn't because the seat was double booked. It wasn't due to a security issue. It was because someone decided I didn't look like I belonged there. And for the last 5 days, I have remained silent. Not because I lacked words, but because the moment demanded more than reaction. It demanded recalibration. She tapped the screen behind her. It lit up with the words, Airline Equity Act, 2025. A collective intake of breath echoed in the room. Camille continued, voice steady. "Today, I am introducing the Airline Equity Act, an industry-wide reform initiative with 2 immediate priorities." She held up a single finger. First, mandatory ethics and bias training for all airline personnel, executive to entry level. The FAA will oversee the redesign, and all certifications will expire if compliance is not met within 12 months. Gasps, then typing. Phones vibrated across the room. "Second," she said, lifting another finger, "effective immediately, Horizon Skies will divest from any and all capital managed by Winslow Holdings." You could hear the air leave the lungs of half the financial journalists in the room. She let that silence linger. She elaborated. 3 years ago, Winslow Holdings purchased a minority stake in Horizon Skies as part of a portfolio expansion. At the time, I believed financial neutrality could be maintained. I was wrong. She faced the cameras. No entity that tolerates racial bias in leadership or policy will ever again profit from the movement I built. Period. And just like that, she redrew the map of influence. In boardrooms across the country, executives scrambled to digest what she'd done. The FAA's press office went dark for nearly an hour, then returned with a short statement. The FAA acknowledges Dr. Camille Jordan's Airline Equity Act. We will convene an emergency session to explore its implications and next steps. Translation: this is real, and it's moving fast. Winslow Holdings PR firm released a counterstatement by 1:04 p.m., calling the move politically motivated, a dangerous precedent, and fiscally irresponsible. But Wall Street didn't agree. Within an hour, Horizon Sky's stock jumped 6.3%. Aviation forums exploded. This is bigger than a boycott. Camille just redefined executive leadership. She's shifting the entire industry with one policy. Meanwhile, in public spaces, airports, lounges, student unions, people gathered around screens. They weren't just watching a CEO make a policy announcement. They were watching someone reclaim power not just for herself, but for an entire system of overlooked, dismissed, and denied passengers and professionals. Social media exploded again, but this time, the tone had shifted. At Camille. The blueprint meant equity in the air. Pilot the future. Ruth watched from her living room. The sunlight warmed her fingers as she held her tablet. When Camille said, "Some think justice is loud, but sometimes justice is a quiet correction," Ruth whispered. "That's the line. That's the legacy." Camille ended her speech with no flourish, just truth. We have long accepted that skies are not neutral, neither is policy. So today, we stop pretending. Airlines don't just move people, they carry history, memory, power, and we are going to do it better. Then she stepped back. No questions, no dramatics, just thunderous applause. Later that night, an airline in Europe issued a statement aligning with the Airline Equity Act. Then, a regional American carrier followed suit. Within 24 hours, 4 more committed to adopting the ethics training framework proposed by Camille. Journalists didn't call it a movement. They called it a course correction. Back in her office, Camille stood at the window, watching the sun dip below the skyline. Her phone buzzed. A message from a former FAA advisor. "They say you just shook the industry." She replied, "No, I just landed." The room was colder than it looked. Boardrooms were always like that. Glass, marble, air-conditioned logic. But this one felt different. Heavy. Not from temperature, but from silence. Camille sat at the far end of the long, polished table, her posture straight, her hand folded in her lap. Across from her sat 6 board members, 5 men, 1 woman, eyes carefully trained to remain neutral. Voices cleared before being used. They had asked for a closed-door conversation. What they meant was a political execution dressed in professional courtesy. "Dr. Jordan," one of them began, "this isn't personal." It was always personal. He continued, "The implementation of the Airline Equity Act has stirred significant market volatility. Investors are cautious. There's a growing perception that Horizon Skies has taken too strong a stance on cultural issues. It's become polarizing." Camille didn't blink. Another board member added, "You've been called visionary, but also disruptive. You've become the story, and that creates a liability." They didn't mention that stock had surged. They didn't mention the media was mostly in awe. What they saw wasn't numbers. What they saw was uncontrolled narrative. A woman who didn't flinch. A black woman who didn't apologize. That scared them more than market risk. "We'd like to propose a transition," the chair said. The room hushed further. "You would retain emeritus status, honorary, public-facing if needed, but the day-to-day leadership would shift to a new CEO." Camille looked at each of them, slowly. No anger, just confirmation. "You want me out?" They hesitated. "It's for stability," one said. Camille stood. "You want a stable woman, not a strong one." They didn't respond. She placed her access card on the table. "You're going to find that stability feels a lot like stagnation." Then she turned and left. No fanfare, no farewell. Just footsteps echoing down a corridor built from glass and fragility. That night, the news broke. Camille Jordan removed from Horizon Sky's board. Subtle words, carefully crafted. She hadn't resigned. She had been removed. Public reaction was swift. One camp celebrated. She was too political. She crossed a line. CEOs shouldn't be activists. But a larger, louder voice pushed back. "You silenced the only one who didn't need a microphone." She didn't yell. She changed everything. She's gone, but the blueprint isn't. Within hours, #Quiet Storm began trending. A national columnist wrote, "They pushed her out because they couldn't contain her, because she made power look too effortless, too quiet, and that scares men more than rage." Another added, "The men who removed her will still fly first class, but now they'll do it under a code of ethics," she wrote, while they tried to erase her. A week passed, then another. Camille made no public appearances, no interviews. She vanished, not out of shame, but as a strategy. Let absence speak. Let the system miss her. And it did. 10 days after her exit, an incident occurred at another major airline. A flight attendant refused boarding to a black physician, accusing her of falsifying credentials. A video went viral. Public fury reignited. People didn't just share the video, they tagged Camille. "Where is she when we need her?" She warned us. "Bring her back." Then something changed. One by one, major airlines began to respond, not with PR campaigns, but with policy. The first signed onto the Airline Equity Act voluntarily, then the next. By the end of the month, 5 of the top 8 U.S. carriers had adopted Camille's full ethics protocol. No adjustments, no branding, just her words, her framework, her system, without her name on it. And that was the point. A leaked internal memo from one airline CEO read, "Jordan's model is the most comprehensive ethics guide we've ever seen. If we don't implement it, we'll get buried by the next scandal. Adopt it, quietly." They called her disruptive, then built their future on her designs. Camille watched it all unfold from a small lakeside house in Northern Virginia. Her phone buzzed occasionally. A journalist, a friend, an old rival. She answered none of them. Instead, she read a letter that had arrived by post. It was handwritten, from a flight attendant in Detroit. "I used to ignore things I saw in the cabin. I didn't want to lose my job. But after you, I know what it means to stand in place and still move the world. Thank you." She folded the letter, placed it into a drawer beside dozens of others. That night, a high school debate team in Atlanta opened their regional tournament with a tribute. A young black girl walked to the microphone and said, "Dr. Camille Jordan showed us that you don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to be undeniable." Camille stood by the water later that evening, wind brushing across her shoulders. She had lost a title. She had lost a board seat. But what she'd gained was more permanent, not a name in lights, a legacy in motion. They removed her from the room, but they couldn't remove what she built into its walls. It was late May in Washington, D.C. The air was thick with spring, heavy with cherry blossoms and hope. Inside the grand courtyard of the Georgetown University Law Center, folding chairs lined the lawn like soldiers in perfect rows. Faculty in regalia filled the stage. Proud parents angled phones and squinted through the morning light. It was commencement day. Rows of graduates in black gowns buzzed with barely contained energy. Their hoods fluttered. Their shoes scuffed the stone beneath them. Some grinned. Some wept. And all of them, every single one, had one name whispering like a current beneath the day's formalities. Camille Jordan. She wasn't listed on the program. She wasn't a keynote speaker. She hadn't even confirmed her attendance. And yet, everyone knew she might come. Because one of the graduating students, Raina Blake, the first black valedictorian in the school's recent history, had made a bold request months earlier. Can we invite Dr. Camille Jordan as our honorary guest? The faculty had said no. Camille had said nothing. The ceremony began. The speeches flowed. The sun climbed. Raina's turn came. She stepped up to the microphone with composure well beyond her years. Her voice rang clear and unwavering. "When I arrived here 3 years ago," she began, "I was told to know my place. Today, I do. My place is here, at the top of my class." Laughter and applause followed. Then she shifted. "There's a woman who isn't listed on your program. She isn't giving a speech today. She didn't accept our invitation, but we invited her anyway." A hush fell. Raina looked out into the audience. Dr. Camille Jordan taught us that sometimes the loudest voice is the one that never yells. Sometimes the greatest power is not in taking the mic, but in choosing not to. People turned, scanning the crowd. And then, at the very back of the courtyard, just beyond the reach of the canopy, she stood. Camille, wearing no robe, holding no title, just a tailored dark coat, her hands clasped calmly in front of her. A few students noticed first, then more, then all. The applause began small, hesitant, like a question. Then it spread, row by row, section by section. Not a roar, not the kind of cheer reserved for celebrities or football coaches. This was different, deeper. It wasn't just applause, it was recognition. But Camille didn't wave. She didn't bow. She didn't step forward. She simply nodded. And then she turned away. Behind the stage, just past the archives room, a single slab of stone had been unveiled that morning at Raina's request. No plaque, no ceremony, just a quiet etching. Sometimes, silence changes everything. CJ. Students would walk past it for years. Some would know the full story. Most wouldn't, but all would feel it. Later that day, Raina found Camille standing beneath an old elm tree on the edge of campus. She approached slowly, respectfully. "You came," Raina said. Camille smiled. "You asked? I didn't think you'd accept." "I didn't," Camille replied. "I just showed up." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Raina added, "You don't know what you mean to us. To me." Camille looked at her, gaze warm but steady. "I know what it cost to become who I am," she said. "What matters is that it costs you less." Raina nodded, blinking back tears. "Will you ever speak publicly again?" she asked. Camille tilted her head. "Maybe, maybe not. Speaking was never the point." "Then what was?" Camille turned toward the courtyard. "The point," she said, "was to leave something behind that doesn't need me to explain it." In the days that followed, the photo of Camille standing silently at the back of the ceremony went viral. No caption, no microphone, just her presence. The internet dubbed her the woman who didn't clap for herself because she wasn't done yet. Months later, when law students cited precedent for racial equity in the aviation industry, they referred to the Airline Equity Act, not by number, but as Camille's doctrine. When leadership forums quoted her, they didn't quote from a speech. They quoted the stone. Sometimes, silence changes everything. It became a mantra, painted on murals, printed on sweatshirts, tattooed on forearms. And yet, Camille never returned to the spotlight. She declined interviews, refused honorary awards, turned down memoir offers, not out of bitterness, out of belief. That legacy is not what you say when you're gone. It's what keeps moving in your absence. At her lake house, Camille sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip low across the water. A child's laughter echoed from a distant dock. Wind rustled the trees. Somewhere, A plane traced a silent arc across the sky. She didn't need to board it, didn't need to own it. It flew differently now, because of her.